Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is Thursday, July 18th, 6:05 a.m. East Coast time. We have a showdown slate in the WNBA. So on the East Coast, this game starts at 3 p.m. Eastern time. There's a $5,000 prize pool to first. Shout out to the person in over on Twitter who DM'd me who took down the $10,000 to first, and I think for fourth place for $1,000 in some other spots in the WNBA slate last night. That was awesome, or yesterday afternoon into last night. That was absolutely incredible. Congrats once again. Let's see if somebody can knock down, if not myself, somebody else in this viewership can knock down the $5,000 prize. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the channel. My name is Sal Vetri, and I cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL, NBA, WNBA, like you see right here, MLB, which I'll have a video up later right after this one. By the time you're watching this, that one will most likely be up as well. I also have a Patreon page. What you're seeing right now is my projection system. It's a little bit different, pretty much the same thing that you would get if you became a Patreon. You can see I have blacked out in columns P, Q, and R, if you can see that right here, this section. It's blacked out. That's my projected point per minute, projected points, projected value. That's pretty much the goods in terms of what everything else adds up to. So you can get this if you go down below, link down below. Occasionally I'll do a podcast just with the baseball season being in full swing and being in the midst of just traveling to different cities to move, officially moving next Thursday. There's supposed to be a different time, but now it is next Thursday officially, finally. So yeah, I'll be listing just a top like 8 to 10 player pool for the showdown slate as well today, along with these projections that are always there. These are up right now on Patreon. You can get them. It's linked down below. You can support me, as well as there's MLB content there, as well as there will be football content. So that's the plugs. Hit the like button. If you're watching this video right now and you are not subscribed, you are part of 45% of the people that have not been subscribed over my past 100,000 views. That's a lot. It does go a long way. It allows me to keep doing this instead of having to work during these hours or sleep during these hours and then get up and work, right? So I love doing this, but if it does take up 5 to 6 hours of my day, it is something that would have to slowly become a part-time job. So if you could hit that subscribe button, that does help me get there. So thank you. That has been my goal since day one, if you watch my videos, to turn this thing into a career, and that is the biggest fuel to that engine and propels me forward, is hitting that red subscribe button. So thank you very much. Let's get into the video now. So this might be the weirdest showdown slate you might ever see in a WNBA slate, or really any slate for that matter. So what do we have here? Well, there's a lot of things that are going to be factored in, and a lot of places that you're going to have to make assumptions, although educated assumptions, for minutes for this LA team. You have Candace Parker and Alana Beard doubtful. Parker has been now, this will miss her second game in a row, pretty much 3, because she left on the 12th, I believe, in 6 minutes into the game. Well, what does that do? Well, that makes Nika pretty much a lock. It doesn't have to be in your captain spot, but pretty much a lock to be in. In the 2 games without Candace, she saw 34 in 35 minutes, and she's absolutely dominated. It also makes Cheney a very good play, who's seen 31 minutes in each of those games without Candace, stepping into sort of that number 2 on the team in terms of forwards. But what does it do for the rest of the players that we don't know what to do with them? So Beard played in, I believe, the last game, or played 2 games ago, not the last game. Who saw the biggest bump? Well, the players who saw the biggest bump were Raquan Williams and TRP, Ruffin Pratt. Ruffin Pratt saw 36 minutes, but don't be fooled. 5 of those, or 6 of those actually, because WNBA has 6-minute overtimes, were in overtime. So she actually saw 30 minutes, which is still a good amount. Raquan Williams saw 34 minutes, which is a good amount. But here's the thing. Raquan Williams isn't playing today. She's not playing for a while. She was suspended 10 games due to some domestic violence claims that finally got resolved. Maybe that's not enough if there's actually something, but we won't get into that. So yeah, Raquan Williams is out. So that's a player. If you want to factor in Candace Parker, Alana Beard, and Raquan Williams in terms of their average minutes per game on this season, or what you would expect them to play at least in this game, you're looking at close to 80 minutes of production gone, if not 80 minutes of production. So we have to find 80 minutes to give away to this team. And as far as I know, they didn't sign anybody. There's nobody in the Draftkings player pool that's new players, and usually Draftkings is right on top of that. So it's going to be given away when you take into account that there's doubtful tags on Parker, there's doubtful tags on Beard. Right now I have them as out, and you have Raquan Williams definitely out. There's going to have to be 80 minutes split up here between 7 players. 80 additional minutes split up between 7 players. So it becomes tough. There's obviously going to be a few players who are going to see the biggest bumps, and I'll talk about them right now. Chelsea Gray, a point guard with no Alana Beard and no Raquan Williams. That is right there at the point guard position alone, somewhere close to 45 minutes of action, if not more. So I'm giving Chelsea Gray, I'm giving Ruffin Pratt 2 of the biggest minute allocations on the team. Chelsea Gray is getting 36 minutes for me, and Ruffin Pratt's getting 36 minutes as well. That might seem like a lot, but try and tell me where you have 45 extra point guard minutes going. I get it. Marina Mabrey and Sydney Weiss are on this team. I already gave Sydney Weiss a bump of about 12 minutes for which she's been playing. I already gave Mabrey a bump of about 10 minutes for which she's been playing. I don't feel comfortable going bigger there. I'd rather give it to a Ruffin Pratt, somebody that they've shown trust in going to, and obviously a Chelsea Gray. There's a good chance Chelsea Gray can play 38 to 40 minutes today. I just don't want to project for her to play the entire game. Now, obviously, some of those minutes for the rotations are going to kind of filter out to other players on the team. I have Kalani Brown, who only saw 18 minutes in regulation. She saw 2 minutes in overtime. I have her now at 20. I have, for LA, other players, Neek is at 35, and you have Cheney at 32. So when you add this all up, it's going to get you to your 200-minute allocation, but it's going to take giving some players, and that is 3 players on this LA team with 35-plus minutes. When you're looking at a showdown slate and you're trying to find opportunity in WNBA and NBA for that matter, come from minutes. When you're trying to find any sort of edge in a showdown slate, I think the biggest one is entering 150 lineups if you can, if you have the funds to. Not a lot of people do. So number 2, leaving money on the table. But if you're just talking about identifying players, it's the ones who will have the most minutes. If you're playing somebody who is going to have 36 minutes like a Chelsea Gray, or should have somewhere around there, at a 0.9 fantasy points per minute, I don't know how you don't play her over somebody like an Alicia Gray or an Wnba from Dallas, who are going to have similar matchups or a little bit better of matchups in terms of their defensive matchup, but they're on a back-to-back, and they're going to see around 5 less minutes tonight at a minimum, and they're the same amount of production in terms of being the same player. So it just becomes difficult when you have those extra 4 to 5 minutes, which if you go by fantasy point per minute, if you score 1 fantasy point per minute in a favorable or neutral matchup, they're going to give you an extra 4 to 5 points on average. Now, yeah, you can only score 2 in that time, but you could also score 8 in that time. So it might not sound like a lot that I'm projecting these players for an extra 4 or 5 minutes today than they usually get when Alana Beard, when Raquan Williams are healthy. But it's an understatement to say that it's important. So yeah, I think that figuring out the LA minutes can be tough. Can you see Sydney Weiss go for 25 minutes today and you get Chelsea Gray playing her normal 32? Yes, I'd be shocked. I think that the minutes allocations are going to very much come down to Mabrey, Weiss, all the guards pretty much, but primarily, like we said, Ruffin Pratt and Chelsea Gray. So that just handles all of the kind of injury news. If I had to put out some other things, about 80 starting minutes to go around. So that's really it from the LA side in terms of where I'm going. There's only 7 players to choose from, right? One of those players is Kalani Brown, who they still seem reluctant to give minutes to. They'd rather just roll Nika out there for pretty much the entire game, roll Cheney out there, her sister, for more than 3/4 of the game, and then fill in the cracks with a Kalani Brown. Now, if Kalani Brown's going to jump into the starting lineup, some things can change, but I'm not positive if that's going to happen just yet. But again, with no Raquan Williams, this is going to be a lineup that we have not seen yet. So keep an eye on this starting lineup. I think there's a chance Sydney Weiss jumps into the starting lineup tonight. It's going to be a Nika, it's going to be a Nika, Chelsea Gray, a Cheney, and then see what the last 2 pieces are. Probably a Ruffin Pratt, if I had to guess, a Ruffin Pratt and a Kalani Brown. But keep an eye. If it's a Sydney Weiss that jumps into the lineup at 3,200 in her utility spot price, that becomes very interesting tonight. If it's a Mabrey for some reason, that becomes very interesting. But as I'm looking at this from LA, the players that I have the least interest in would be Mabrey and Sydney Weiss. There is some interest in Kalani Brown for me because I think there are more minutes to go around than we expect tonight with no Raquan Williams, and I don't think all those 34 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you want to say Raquan Williams is going to play today, especially with Beard out or doubtful. I don't think all those minutes will just be filtered to the guards because it's almost impossible. So I think some rotation minutes will go around for Kalani Brown today. And it makes sense too because his team in Dallas is a little bit bigger, I would say. Now Gloria Johnson back, Ply Sands is there, Isabel Harrison is there, Kayla Thornton's there. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Really no interest in Mabrey and Weiss from LA, which gives me 5 players that I have some interest in. There's going to be a lot of interest on my part in Ruffin Pratt, in Cheney, and in Nika. The problem with getting to Chelsea Gray, and actually there's no problem with getting to Chelsea Gray. She's going to play over 35 minutes today. She just has to, and she might touch 40. And when you're playing that many minutes, it's just hard not to play well. The only issue that I have is that she's playing the most difficult team in the league in terms of scoring fantasy points against. Dallas is number 1 guarding, limiting production in terms of fantasy points to the point guard in the guard position. Wnba, terrible, but sounds close, so we'll go with that. Alicia Gray, those players are really good. Kayla Davis is actually really phenomenal on defense, so these are players that are going to limit the production. Now, Chelsea Gray is a great player, and she's going to see a lot of minutes, so I'm not Xing her out of my player pool right now. I want to look into some other things before I do that, but I have much, much more interest in the forwards here. And now you're saying, well, Sal, Ruffin Pratt's a point guard, and you're saying that you have so much interest. You have hesitant to have interest in Chelsea Gray, but not Ruffin Pratt. Yeah, but Ruffin Pratt's $4,200 cheaper. You're paying $5,200 for a player who is not as productive as Chelsea Gray. Chelsea Gray's averaging 0.9 fantasy points per game, or fantasy points per minute. And then you have Tierra Ruffin Pratt. Sorry, I feel like I have the scenes. Tierra Ruffin Pratt's at 0.72, so it's a big drop off. But when they're both going to be playing, at least I believe, similar minutes, Ruffin Pratt's going to have to see over 32, probably closer to 35. I have her at 36 today for 4,200 less. You're not going to find anybody else in the 5K price range that is going to give you the same sort of upside. Nobody. I actually have McGee Stafford projected for 24 minutes today. They slowly keep bumping her minutes. You saw 26, I believe, in the last game. I have her projected for 24. She's a very good point per minute producer, almost a minute, or almost one fantasy point per minute, 0.95. That's really good. She's 4,400. That's the closest thing you're going to get to being a good play next to Tierra Ruffin Pratt in this price range. But Ruffin Pratt still has 12 minutes over McGee Stafford, so that makes up for any loss in production per minute. So when you're asking me from LA who are my biggest interests, ranking them is probably Nico, Woolmike, Cheney, and then Ruffin Pratt. Ruffin Pratt is a great value today on a showdown, which you shouldn't be looking for value on a showdown slate. You should be looking for like one cheap play, maybe two, to fit more studs into your lineup. But don't be looking the whole time like, oh, but who is the mid-range value? No, it's who scores the most fantasy points on a showdown slate. It should be like that every night, but every night you're choosing between 6 or 7 different games. So you are trying to find a value piece because you have so many more options. But on a showdown slate, if somebody is $7,800 like Gloria Johnson today, and she gets you, 25 points, and you think that the value play is $7,200 Alicia Gray, and she gets you 24 points, well, you're losing because Gloria Johnson was only $600 more and she scored one more point. And at the end of the day, you need one more point. Whereas on a slate where there's like 6 or 7 more teams, you don't need that. That would be mainly an NBA slate that big, but a 4 or 5 game NBA slate, Jesus, that would be fine. So, the Dallas side of it, where are my interests lying? And if you want to know my exact interest in my player pool and ranking my player pool, it's going to be on Patreon, link down below. If you want to get access to this blacked out portion right here, who are the projected points. I mean, right here, the fact that I'm giving out just the DVP and the minutes projection is something you're not going to find in a lot of spots. But also, if you do want to find in differentials, but also if you do want to see the projected value in points and point per minute that I have today for each of these players, you can get it linked down below on Patreon. You can support me there. So, Dallas side of the ball. Dallas has a interesting spot tonight because they're on a back-to-back. So keep this in mind. They're on a back-to-back, and when you're on a back-to-back, the players that are older or coming off of injury or working with injury are the ones to kind of monitor the most. So who falls into that category for Dallas? I'd say it's Gloria Johnson by far. I don't think there's any way Gloria Johnson plays her full run of minutes today. One, she's just working herself back from an injury still within the past 3 weeks or so. And two, she's the oldest player on her team tonight and potentially on the court tonight at 28 years of age. Now, it doesn't sound old, but compared to the WNBA lifespan, it's way older than the average. So Gloria Johnson tonight, I don't think she sees her normal run. I have her at 24 minutes instead of her, which is what she's been seeing since she got back on average, but she's been seeing more and more as of late. 28 in the last game yesterday, I believe. I don't think she goes near that today. I have her at 24. Now, the matchup against LA for these forwards is favorable. So this is where we're kind of playing with fire, because if Gloria Johnson does go out there and play 28 minutes, an extra 4 minutes, in a very favorable matchup as a player who scores almost a fantasy point per minute, one of the most productive players in the slate, yeah, it becomes very scary because she could play 28 minutes tonight and drop 34 fantasy points. Whereas if she plays 24 minutes, she can still drop 26 or so fantasy points just based on her productivity in this matchup. So I don't want to X out Gloria Johnson right away, but she's the one that worries me the most tonight on a back-to-back. Her minutes can get slashed to 20 tonight, and I wouldn't be shocked. So I don't know what to do with Gloria Johnson yet. I lean not to play her. I lean to just ignore her. But the fact that she's one of the most productive players on the court tonight and probably the most productive player on her team on a point per minute basis is worrisome to say that you're going to be fading her. But I think there are other options that we can get to. It's similar upside if we don't play her. And I think that's probably where I end up going. Other than that, I have Arik still at 32 minutes today. She's a young player. She's a rookie. Young players, you don't have to worry about it. Literally, if you're below 26, I'm not going to be worrying about it in the WNBA in terms of your back-to-back minutes. So your Ariks, your Kayla Thorntons, your Alicia Grays, pretty much everybody else on the slate outside of Teresa Pleasance. Teresa Pleasance is 27. But Teresa Pleasance hasn't been playing minutes anyways. Now that they're giving more minutes to Amani McGee Stafford, they're giving more minutes to, obviously, Gloria Johnson being back, Kayla Thornton getting her normal minutes, and then Isabel Harrison continuing to play around 25 minutes or so, like she's averaged on the year. So apply stance, I'm not too worried about her. She's not in play for me today. I have her at 6 minutes. Even if she sees a lot of minutes, it would be like 10. Isabel Harrison is an interesting play at 6,600. She's a decently productive player, 0.79 fantasy points per minute. It's nothing that I'm dying to get to at that price point. I think there's better plays below her, but I think you do see, she saw limited minutes in the last game, I think only 23, which was yesterday. I think you do see, she's been back from her injury for a while now. I think you see closer to 25 or 26 around her average, or above average, I should say, minutes per game on the season. Some other spots that I think are interesting from Dallas, and I think the most interesting spot on the slate is Amani McGee-Stafford. McGee-Stafford has been 3 games in a row, 20 or more fantasy points. She's a great fantasy point per minute producer at 0.95. That's great. That is like a top 6 on this slate, and she's priced as the 4th least expensive player in terms of the ones that are going to be active today seeing minutes. $4,400 for this player is way too cheap. She saw it take 26 minutes in the last game. She saw a spike in her minutes. I don't think those would stand that big of a spike, but I have her at 24. That's well above her minutes per game of 11. Obviously, some of those were like 2 game minutes. But yeah, this matchup is really beneficial. Even if she only sees 20 minutes today, and those 4 minutes go to Glory Johnson, and Glory Johnson seeing 28, and McGee-Stafford's only seeing 20, I'd still like her at 4,400. She is the best play below, I would say. We already talked about Ruffin Pratt being a really good play, but I would still prefer McGee-Stafford over Ruffin Pratt just because she's $800 cheaper. She's 0.23 fantasy point per minute wise better, and that's a huge difference. And she's going to see less minutes, but she's going to be more productive with the better matchup than Ruffin Pratt. So I like both of them, but I would say that McGee-Stafford is the best play below, and let's just find a price point where I like somebody. Like, the best play below $8,000? Like, I don't know. I'd rather have McGee-Stafford over Glory Johnson today. Obviously, pure points-wise, Glory Johnson has a path to 35 minutes or 35 fantasy points, when McGee-Stafford's path is probably closer to, honestly, 30. She has a path to 30 if she sees her 26 minutes she saw last game, and she plays a little bit above average. So in this matchup, yeah, McGee-Stafford, I can't say enough good things. Brooke McCarthy-Williams out for about 6 minutes. She's not in play today. So there's only 16 players actually in play today, which is a smaller sample player pool than usual. Usually you're around 20. Well, that's because Raquan Williams is out, suspended. 2 players in Candace Parker and Alana Beard are probably going to be out. And there's just a couple other players who only see 1 or 2 minutes that I just decided aren't going to play today for better middle allocation, like Megan Gustav. And so if you just cancel out Brooke McCarthy-Williams, you're down to 15 players in a player pool. Like I said, I like to get to 8 to 10 for a showdown slate, and then use those if I'm building multiple lineups, or at least by hand. So with that said, you can go on Patreon later today. You can see my ranked player pool. You can also see the projections. But for right now, my name's Sal. Check out the MLB content later today. For captains, I don't know where you should go as of yet, but I think it's either for me going to be Cheney or Nika. And then potentially McGee-Stafford if you want to fit a lot. But I think that there's no way that Nika is not going to go for a 35 to 40 plus burger today. And you're going to need that in the captain spot unless Cheney does too. So thank you. My name's Sal. Best of luck tonight, everybody. Peace out, gang.